Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Welcome to episode 13 of Behind the Minbar. Here with me in the studio, I'm joined by my dear brother, friend and mentor, Sayed Hussain Makke. Assalamu alaikum, Sayed.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Habibi Haji Mahdi.
We finally got you in here.
Finally, it's my honor to be here.
Alhamdulillah. How are you? How are you keeping? How's everything?
We say Alhamdulillah, considering circumstances, it's been tough, but Alhamdulillah for everything.
Alhamdulillah wa shukr. Now, Sayyid, it's no surprise to anyone that follows you or knows you that you fight a tough fight. You know, you are at the forefront of this issue, whether it was for the last year and a half, whether it was about, or even before that, about Palestine and about Lebanon, your home country. And as I understand it, you've been living in Lebanon for over a decade, correct? So first, let's talk about your journey, how you ended up in Lebanon, and then we'll talk about your experiences in Lebanon, and then even up to the current time.
Of course, yes. So my parents, they left Lebanon when my mother was still pregnant with me. I was born and raised in London. And I grew up like many people that grow up in a diaspora community. You go through a little bit of an identity crisis as you're growing up, especially in your teenage years. The people around you don't always look like you or talk like you. And even if they do, they're going through the same thing that you're going through. I remember when we would visit Lebanon every 2 or 3 summers, whenever I'd go there, they would call me British, Brittani, right? And then I'd come back to London and they'd call me Arab. I'm an Arab. So I'm a low-key, had this great lyric actually that used to resonate with me when he said, I'm an Arab amongst Englishmen and an Englishman amongst Arabs. So there was no place in which you really felt like home that belonged to you. You were a child of diaspora. And somewhere along the line, I think we all have to make a decision. A lot of people make a decision where they choose to conform into the society that they're raised in. You know, a lot of those people, whether in England or Canada, Australia, America, English becomes the first language that you speak. I remember for myself, for example, I would speak Arabic in a broken way that my parents understood, but I couldn't read in Arabic. I couldn't write Arabic.
Likewise, yeah.
You know, yeah, it was rough, and so I couldn't read the Quran. And I remember going through that crisis to a point where I wanted to know more about my religion, my culture, my heritage. I didn't know where to start. And long story short, so that I don't, make this a monologue, a lot of experiences happened in which I decided I would like to study my heritage and my language. I wanted to learn Arabic, really. At that time, in 2012, I had just graduated from university and the war in Syria was happening. And at that time, people were speaking about Sayyidah Zainab's shrine, alayhi salam, being taken over. And this was so close to Lebanon, so close to home, and Beirut was getting bombed. So I felt like, okay, I want to be in that part of the world when these people who I belong to are going to go through this very difficult time. As I'm getting closer to religion, finding out more about Imam al-Mahdi, Ajla Fajr al-Sharif, and I started really feeling, in your youth, and you have that vigor. And so I felt like I want to be in that part of the world. And so let me study Arabic for 1 year in that part of the world. And so I went to Lebanon, and the intention was to study Arabic, really. But then what happens is you inherit your heritage. Again, it all comes back to you after you travel back. If you're a child of diaspora, you travel back. You're inheriting everything that was there from your forefathers, the battles of your forefathers, the issues that the people around you are facing, even in terms of the nation states that were there, that now you have a little piece of land for the last 100 years cut up that was called Lebanon, and then another land called Syria, another land called Iraq, another land called Palestine, Jordan, and then you have to navigate that. So a lot of identity crisis, and I began with language. My intention was religious, but I began with language. And so you end up coming back to a culture, a heritage. And of course, like you mentioned, Even when it comes to the battles that we're fighting, you inherit those as well.
Sent him. And yeah, I can definitely, from my own life, yani I was born here, likewise, immigrant parents. Didn't know Arabi. I started learning Arabi from, it's funny, like Latmiya videos, like translating Latmiyas,
Yes.
like Basim Karbala. And just, I'm like, what does this even mean? Like, I don't even, because like you had this one in 2012 in Fusha, and like, it's like, I had this one line, it's narun wa dukhanan wa dima. But anyway, the line he says, Ara shamsan ala rumhan. I see the sun on a spear. I was like, I didn't know what I didn't know what Ara was. I knew what Shams was, and then I didn't know what Rumah was. So I was like, what does Ara mean? I didn't even know that. I'm like, for me, it's Iraq, it's Shuf. Shuf هذا. But in Fusha, it's Ara. So that was just a little side note about
No,
how.
subhanAllah, this is interesting because it shows you how the children of diaspora, the way in which we were getting closer to our religion was very cultural. So you had the cultural symbol of Iraq, which is Basim Karbala'i, which is a religious figure as well, but also very cultural. So through a latmiya, which is a cultural eulogy, it's a cultural expression, it changes according to the culture. You were able, with the religious sentiment, to come back towards inheriting your heritage. Even that heritage, there's,
Yeah.
I'm sure the etymology
Root-
of the word,
yeah, root
yeah,
word.
subhanAllah, I don't even know that. As I'm saying, inheriting your heritage. So the same thing with what I experienced as well. Even if it's language and Arabic, going back, you inherit so much more. So subhanAllah, it's very similar.
Yeah, and then I also actually there's a study that I read recently. It's from a few years ago. It's like a phenomenon that's actually pretty well known at this point about how children in the diaspora they end up being more, especially like the second generation, they end up being more religious like than people in their home country. Like they end up subscribing to their and being more devout. I I believe the reason is that they see that as a way of being more in line with their heritage. Like it's the one thing. Okay, my culture is a certain religion. Like if I'm here in Canada, I'm Iraqi, I'm an Arab, and an Arab generally means being Muslim for most of the time. Thus, I need to play up my Islam so that I differentiate myself from this melting pot of a society where everyone's in.
I agree.
But that's besides the point. Now back to your life. So in Lebanon, you spent 10 years. But what drew you to the houses? Now there's a lot of people that are asking. Someone even asked you this. And a lot of people asking. We have a few friends that have actually gone to the houses. A few mutual friends of ours. So, what drew you to the houses? Now, like as someone who's not from a scholarly family, you don't like it's not expected or incumbent upon you. Yeah, you just pack up and go to the hawzah. So that's just something interesting for someone who's born in the West, grew up in the West, had the comforts of the life in the West, to leave that and to go to Lebanon, beautiful country, not as comfortable, for instance, in a material aspect. What drove that? Like, I understand you wanted to get in line with you wanted to learn the language, and then how did that turn into spending a decade in the house?
So when I went to Lebanon, and my intention was language, I was looking for institutions where I could study. And I actually met a young talib ilm, a student of knowledge, in the hawzah. He was in year 2. And I met him in the country, in the mosque. We were speaking, and he told me he was very interested in the fact that I came from England. And he told me, why don't you come to the hawzah and we can help teach you there? And so I was very interested, as in, okay, I didn't know much about the hawzah. And it's, I was like, it's a sheikh school, basically. So I didn't know too much about it. So I went with him. And I was really interested in knowledge in general. So when I started to meet the sheikhs, and they're all speaking the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt and the narrations of the Imams, and I'm walking inside and I see the pictures of the ulama, the history of the hawzah, I became so interested. And then I looked really different than everyone there. And I was wearing a really tight t-shirt, and I remember even the way that my beard was cut was a different style. And so the sheikhs, when I went into the office, I remember they were very surprised by me. Like, why did you want to come here? And to be honest with you, this is the thing. It was an accident. It was an accident. A lot of the brothers now, people come up to me. Hawzah is a lot more well known now, of course. And when I ask them sometimes, why do you want to go to Hawzah? They don't fully know what Hawzah is, or they will say, we want to make like certain videos, or, you know, that's not what Hawzah is. Hawzah isn't to make, you know, Instagram reels, or Hawzah isn't to make YouTube videos that have views or travel the world.
Trendy.
Right. People see that now that's what you're doing, and that looks amazing to them. But that isn't what Hawzah is. Hawzah is a journey in which, after having experienced it and understood it, and it took me years to understand it, actually, I'll be honest. In the first 3 years of Hawzah, I didn't know what I was doing. Because we didn't have, at that time, guides that were from the West that could tell us of their experiences. We were just a few brothers from around the world, Canada, Australia, and a lot of the brothers actually really helped me to understand what this was. And I wasn't planning to be a sheikh at all. I wasn't planning to lecture. I wasn't planning anything. I just wanted to learn Arabic. But as I started to study Arabic, and I saw the sheikhs, and I just loved knowledge, it took a few months for me to decide I want to commit myself to this. And I decided I want to commit myself, and I'm going to stay here for a few more years where I can truly benefit my community and benefit myself in whatever way that I can. It took me a very long time to gather myself when it came to Arabic. It was very difficult because there was no actual program. So what I would do was I would read a lot of kids' books, Jamila wal Wahsh, Beauty and the Beast, and see how they construct their sentences. I'd sit down with my little cousin and we'd go over the Arabic, and she'd help me. She was like 9 years old at the time. So now she's 20, 21 years old, and she always remembers when she was young, she was a kid, and she was helping me with Arabic, and I was 21 years old. I would watch Arabic TV. So I'd watch like Nabi Yusuf, Mukhtar, and Fusha to train my ear. Even SpongeBob in Arabic, like cartoons, so that I can train my ear and try to understand what they're saying. So I would repeat those words as much as I could. That was the Arabic side of things. And then that really helped me to write my exams in Arabic. It was very difficult for me in the beginning. I met a sheikh. His name was Sheikh Hisham Hammoud. And this sheikh decided to take me under his wing. He took me to South Lebanon. And this is when I understood what Hawzah was. So when I had a real teacher, and the teacher took me under his wing, and he mentored me, I understood that Hawzah was based on a relationship between student and teacher in which they're passing off these skills and keys. And you're the one that takes the keys and opens the right doors. That's why people who study Hawzah, at the end of it, they all understand the system and the methodology of thinking, but they can be very different. One's a speaker, one's a lecturer, one's a writer. They all end up having different skills, but they were taught the same keys. They open different doors, and doors are infinite. And then I realized this path is a very long path. It's a path of mastery. A path of mastery right now, especially in the West, is not something that we are very accustomed to because we don't have time for this. We have 3 years, 4 years at university, and that's it. And then I'm supposed to be an expert in whatever field I'm in, and really it's not the case. So subhanAllah, Hawzah is a path of mastery, a path of mentorship, a path of skill, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment. And I think that one needs to know why they're going. It can't be the way that I did it because that was really random. It was an accident. However, I'm of the belief that it's not truly an accident, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me there. How random is that?
Will.
Yes, why did I was in London, why would I go to Lebanon and then randomly meet this brother in the mosque who took me to Hawzah, and then I randomly become a sheikh?
It's a bit too many things lining up.
Too many, yes. The interesting thing actually is I met a sheikh after a few years, a very respected sheikh in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking him a few questions, advice for me. And then he told me, he said, I visited London many years ago when you were a child. And I found a picture of myself with him. I was 6 years old.
Wow.
And he said, you didn't choose to come to Hawzah. And I said, yeah, I didn't. it just happened in a really strange way. He said, actually, when I went to London and I met your father and I met all the brothers, I came back and I wrote on a piece of paper the names of about 5 or 6 young boys who I thought would be potential young boys that we can bring back to Lebanon to teach them, to come back to help their communities. And your name was on the list. And I was only 6 or 7 years old. And I wondered why. And he said, because when you were a kid, I felt like you had the potential for that. So subhanAllah, he said, you didn't choose to go to hawzah. Yani, you were chosen to go. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the tawfiq to go. But I believe that it's true. I don't remember ever choosing myself to go. And it's been like that ever since. It's been, Allah guiding me. I wish I could tell you that I knew what I was doing and I wasn't, just hitting the walls as I was trying to learn on the job, but that's the truth of the matter. I don't recommend someone follow that though.
So what is your advice to someone who would...
My advice is definitely not to do it my way.
Yeah.
My advice would be to know what the end goal is first.
Okay.
To have an idea about what it is that you want to be, and understand what a scholar actually is, what hawzah really is. A lot of the time people think hawzah is the place you go for spiritual refinement. And it's a spiritual place, but it's not the place for spiritual refinement. Hawzah is books, and it's to have skill, yes, to research. And that can be dry for some people, diligent, rigorous, every single day, the same books until you master those books, until you can teach those books. Most people don't want to do that, and they don't find that very spiritual. Of course, if someone's coming with a godly sentiment and intention, it becomes a spiritual action. But most people don't find that spiritual, and they let down when they go to hawzah, and they're not living this, allama tabatabai, going on this spiritual wayfaring journey to Allah and to know Himself. And I mean, inshallah, one day someone gets to that level, but that's definitely not how it begins. You have to create that for yourself. You have to create that in your prayers, in your a'mal, in your salatul layl, in your Quran. But that's not what hawzah is. Hawzah teaches you in a very dry way, actually. Dry, academic way to master the book. And so you have to understand what that is and have a goal in mind and know, okay, because of this, I have guidance towards the right teachers because you know what it is that you're going to do, and to commit yourself. I don't see how you can be any sort of respectable talib ilm before 6-7 years at the very least. And that's generous, 6-7 years. I know a few brothers who have studied 6-7 years, but because they're geniuses, they're able to be at an acceptable level. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, for myself, for example, it was only after I had studied for 10 years that I started to feel like, I'm beginning to understand some concepts. Yeah.
Almost.
Almost. Yeah. Wallah, 10 years is the basics in hawzah. That's the basics.
And if you've spent 10 years and you still feel like that, what does the layman,
Yes.
this person who opens up he writes a little Twitter thread or has Shia online library, reads a couple of things and thinks, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
I've mastered it. I figured out the deen.
And subhanAllah, religion is something that everyone likes to comment on. Everyone has an opinion about. Like, no one has an opinion about how you should, work on your broken engine. And, because
it's not like a controversial thing.
Yeah. I mean,
there's no debates about it.
I'm not a mechanic. I'm I don't know. But with religion, everyone wants to give their opinion about it.
But
God wouldn't do this.
I feel that it should be this way.
Yeah, my opinion. What I think is, I'm like, whoa, subhanAllah. It's in hawzah, the more you study, if you study properly, the more you realize you don't know.
That's, I believe, also there's a hadith from one of the imams that goes in a similar way. I don't have it, so I'm not going to say it. But it's something along the lines of, like, real knowledge is knowing what you don't know. Or is that even a hadith, or is that from some scholar?
I don't want to be. Don't know?
No, real hadith is knowing that you don't know something like that. Maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. I don't want to be like one of those.
See, in hawzah, if you did that, you get whipped for that.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to be one of those Tumblr pages that's like.
It's like, I see the truth in your eyes.
Imam Ali.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
sun is shining bright.
Yeah,
Imam Ali
yeah,
alayhi
yeah,
salam.
yeah.
And it's like a
Yeah.
very cutesy quote.
Yeah. No, we can't do that.
Yeah. I apologize. I withdraw my comment.
No, I understand what you're trying to say.
I swear I read it. It could be a
There are
popular
many.
quote or a hadith. There's
Yeah.
something about
Stop,
knowing.
Mehdi, stop.
Yeah, okay. I apologize. I surrender. Okay, continuing on. Now we get to the current day. Well, not the current day. Let's rewind a bit. You're in Lebanon, and what happens, and suddenly there's bombing, there's war, there's what you were living in a quiet village or a quiet dai'a, and now it's become a site for bombings. Yeah, I mean, for anyone that follows you, we see it. Like you'd post, listen, that's the home across the street, or your daughter's with you. Allah yahfadha. Your daughter's with you, and she just got used to hearing the bombing. Now I don't want to speak too much, but I want to hear it from you. Yani, how was that? How did you manage? Like, how do you wrap your head around that? And then also, how did the decision to come back come about?
Yes.
Because you've been in London for a
Yeah,
few
I
months.
mean, that was really difficult.
Yeah.
So my time in Lebanon actually wasn't too peaceful over the last 10 years because there have been so many wars happening around Lebanon and even a lot of political strife in Lebanon simply because of the stance of the people of Lebanon when it comes to Palestine. If the people of Lebanon had abandoned Palestine 10 years ago, there wouldn't have been all these sanctions that the people of Lebanon had been suffering from. So we had gone through those sanctions. I remained in Lebanon the whole time, where there was no petrol, where no oil, electricity. We had 1 hour a day of electricity for several years. I ended up getting solar panels, alhamdulillah, when Allah allowed us to be able to save up and get those. But before that, it was really difficult. A lot of the time, I just got used to not having electricity. I had a battery, and then I'd have a light, and I can charge my phone, and it can charge the Wi-Fi modem, and that was it. Like, I never used anything else, pretty much. But obviously when it comes to hot water, when it comes to the fridge, when it comes to basic necessities, you just have to get around using those. That's how we lived. That's how I lived with my wife in Lebanon for many years. And we pushed through all of that. I remember my brother came to Lebanon once. He barely lasted a few days. The way I would drive my car, literally, I couldn't take him anywhere. I would drive, I'd turn my engine off, and then I'd go downhill. And I would drive. That's how I would drive because there was
on the gas or petrol.
Yeah, I remember everywhere I would take him to go, cut his hair. There'll be no electricity. The guy can't cut his hair. There'll be no bread. We can't get any food. And I remember he had enough. And I told him, I'll call this place. Definitely they have bread. They have sandwiches. And then I called them. They said, yeah, they're bringing the delivery man. Then the delivery man calls me, says, can you come pick me up? I got stranded because he ran out of petrol. So I had to go and save him with my car, my dodgy way of driving. Anyway, we lived through all of that. But the most difficult part was when we didn't have any more baby formula. So that's when I had my daughter and there was no baby formula, and I found it really difficult. So I remember she had to drink, constipation formula for a little while because that was the only formula available. And I'm not the only one that goes through that. Everyone went through that. I called my sister and I said, can you bring baby formula to Lebanon when you come? So she came with a bunch of baby formula and I put them in the back of my car. I'll never forget when the grocery man who was helping me with the groceries was putting the bags in my car, and then he saw the baby formula and he did this, as if he saw gold. And he said, where'd you get that? And it broke my heart. It's just baby formula. And I could tell he has kids at home too. So I gave him that. I had a few left over. I gave him that one. It wasn't about the price of it. It's that it's not available. It's only in the black market. All of that was to cripple the people economically for many years. Up until, of course, what happens last year in October, and Lebanon was being bombed in the south. So I live in South Lebanon. As you mentioned, my daughter, when she would hear those sounds, because it would echo, the sonic booms of the Israeli airplanes, they would echo. The whole house, the glass would shake, everything. You could feel it in your ribs. You could feel it in your bones. And I taught her to clap whenever it would happen. It was a balloon. But it became so difficult, so I sent my wife and daughter away. I remained in Lebanon. I actually refused to leave because we believed that the sheikh in the community has a role to play amongst the people. Aside from helping them financially, spiritually, and raising their morale was very important to be amongst them. I mean, what happens when the sheikh runs away? When the sheikh leaves? So, sheikh, you leave, and what about the rest of us? The sheikh's supposed to be there with the people. My teacher, Sheikh Hisham, he remained in the hawzah, the last man. He remained with the African students that had nowhere to go until they were able to leave and go back to their homes. Then he left the village when the real war kicked off. As for me, I refused to leave. I remained even without my family up until when the bombs became very difficult to bear. My sheikh told me, I request you to leave for now so you can campaign outside and you can perhaps help the people here in that way. I didn't want to leave, so then I left. And this was 3 months ago. It was just before the great escalations in Beirut and then the carpet bombing of the south, in which I lost my teacher and my cousins and my friends, at least 20 of my friends in the last few months. All of them were martyred, if some of them childhood friends. And I saw how fragile life was. And I thought, this can't be normal. And it's not just me going through this. We all went through this. My wife's cousins were bombed in their home. 4 kids killed. That's a local story. That's not front page news. That's a local village story. Everyone has that story in their own way. So for the last 3-4 months, I remained displaced, just like 1.5 million people. Everything we built, dunya-wise, just dunya-wise, you start again. So you imagine your home, your car, your life gone. Your village, the place where you are, just smashed. The place you had coffee is just not there anymore. Your memories, gone. That's dunya-wise. Alhamdulillah, dunya comes back. But lives, souls, taken. Okay, I remember when I left, I didn't know where to go, what to do. I was in London and I figured I have to think of, how to campaign. And we took an Airbnb. And I remember my sheikh told me, try to stay for 3-4 months. So this ends now pretty much. I'm pretty much done, alhamdulillah. And we didn't leave not a mosque, not a opportunity for a fundraiser, nothing, so that we can help the people back home, because we realized no one's going to help them if we're not going to help them. People keep asking, what's the plan? And there comes a time when you have to realize you are the plan.
You have to step up, take initiative.
Take initiative. You have to think and make decisions and rise. And I found many people responded very well to that message, alhamdulillah. And in England, this was the case. And even in Canada, this was the case. As soon as I called you as well, alhamdulillah, you've been able to help me now, also with fundraising and everything else. You just said straight away, yes, whatever it is. And there were many brothers and sisters that felt the same way. So this is what we've been doing. So our life is on pause. But literally, everything's changed. Life's changed 180. Even my perspective on life and what matters most has changed. And the fragility of life. Everything.
Santum. Yeah, just to pick up on what Sayed was mentioning, we just wrapped up, if you're wondering why I dressed like this, we just wrapped up the charity banquet for Lebanon. Alhamdulillah, it was an amazing night. It came together. The planning team did an amazing job. I was not really involved in the planning. I was just a little addition at the end. But alhamdulillah, Sayed has been, he's a trooper. And I think whether he recognizes it now, as he says, or not, he's become kind of the face of this kind of the Western resistance, let's say, but the Western like voice for the people of Lebanon, for the people of Palestine, for the oppressed, and that's something that takes courage to do, because of the situation that we live in.
Well, it's minimum duty. The real people who are on the ground doing the real work. Those are the real heroes. You know, it's not even out of humility. I understand what you're saying, but this is aqal wajib, minimum duty. You have a platform, it's an obligation to use that. You know, like what's it for then? Everything. I really believe all of us, and I mentioned this in the banquet, all of us who are in the West, wherever we are, the only way that we can justify living in these lands and paying these taxes, which go towards perhaps arming the governments and supplying them with the weapons that bomb Muslim people. The only way you can justify your presence here is if you give back to your people. And to give back to your people doesn't only mean financially. To give back to your people with your skills, to give back to your people with your time, to give back to people with your effort, to really start to commit yourself to your people, to Islam. It's the only way you can justify being here. Otherwise, if you're here for your own individualistic ambitions, then I truly wonder about what devotion to God that person actually has. We don't have a religion that's individualistic. This religion is supposed to be practiced as a group. So this is aqal wajib. You're fulfilling your role. I'm trying to fulfill my role. And everyone needs to be trying to fulfill their role. This is what we understand as taklif and duty. And, I can go on a tangent with this wajib kifai idea, but I believe it's, wajib, an obligation on all of us to think this way.
So I think everyone recognizes what you've been doing and the need to be doing this. So inshallah, everyone recognizes, and those that don't will recognize soon, the need for this kind of work, and especially what you're doing. But what would you say to someone who's, you've proven that you have this kind of strength, you have this resolve. Your Sayed Hussain, of course, that has been, no one's perfect, and I'm sure your resolve has been tested at times, especially through the last couple of months. But a lot of people in the West, like when they see news that's disheartening, that's heartbreaking, that feel like it's actually a setback or a step back rather than a step forward. We're not progressing, but we're regressing. I heard from someone this week, they said, so they told a relative of mine, and that relative asked me for advice, what to say, that they're thinking about becoming agnostic, because what kind of God would sit and watch all of this happening, and everything we're doing is just futile, because we don't get results. We're arguing, we're posting on our stories, we're going to the protests, we're donating, but at the end of the day, our loved ones get bombed, and it seems like we take steps back. So how would you strengthen someone's resolve here in the West? Someone that lives here, it's hard from afar. I understand what you say, that it's her obligation, but sometimes some people just give up and say, you know what, I'm just going to live my life and I'm going to move on, because I can't, if I keep caring about this, and then it's just heartbreak after heartbreak. And of course, it sounds like first world problems, it's easy to say, oh, I give up now, but you're not the one that has the bomb falling on your head. And I do recognize that those people in Lebanon and in these war zones actually have the strongest iman of anyone. But what would you say to someone in the West who's given up? His iman has faltered.
First thing I would say is, the reason we do all of this is not based on the external result. I have to be honest with myself. I know Allah is watching me, and I see children being massacred in front of me. It hurts me to see children being massacred in front of me, so I turn away because it hurts me, or I try to help them. Allah sees me. Now, I might be successful in helping them, I might not be. But if I turn my back, I betrayed them. So, we have to operate in a way where we are devoted to God regardless of the external result, if I'm successful in my protection of children or not, of being a voice to the voiceless or not, I have to try to do my part. And Allah will take care of the rest. Allah takes care of the external results. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finds ways to make victory happen for the believers. Musa is on the edge of the sea and he's surrounded by soldiers. And he plants his stick into the ground, says, Kalla, Allah is with me. He will protect me. This is the mantiq of the Quran. So I try to embrace the message of the Quran. We lose our leaders. We lose great personalities. People start to lose faith. Except that leader, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, he wasn't here. There was another leader before him. And he left. Before him, there was another leader. But they all drew their inspiration from the source, which is eternal. The light of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, that says, Hayhat minna dhilla, that says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, that says, Aradita ya Rab, khudh hatta tarda, that says, Ilahi muta'ali al-makan, azim jabarut, shadid al-mihal, ghaniyun al-khalaiq. These words, as he is giving his last breath, that's Imam al-Hussein. He is the inspiration of all of these individuals. We believe from him in the concept of intisaru dam ala sayf, that blood reigns victorious over the sword. This is a concept people don't understand in the modern age. They think that they can assassinate people and that they beat them. We say no. You might kill the individual, but you cannot kill the idea.
The idea is everlasting.
Everlasting, infinite, and millions more are born with that idea. So I try not to attach myself to individuals. I don't think anyone should. I love individuals that represent God. I love them because I love Allah. It's normal to love people who remind you of Allah because it's a sign of how much you love Allah. So if you feel that in your heart or you're grieving, that's good. That means you're still an insan. You're still grieving. I don't want to stop feeling that pain. I don't want to. If you give me an option, I'd say no. I should feel pain. If a genocide is happening, I should feel pain. I don't want to turn away from it. What you're saying is I want to be willfully blind so I can stop going through my own individual pain. And that's selfish. Now, it doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself, but you have to do something as an obligation, as a human being, let alone being a Muslim. A human being. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in one of his sermons in Nahjul Balagha, he speaks about when the soldiers of Muawiyah went into the homes of Muslim and non-Muslim women, Christian women and Jewish women. And he says they'd go into the homes and they'd grab their necklaces and their bracelets and their earrings, they'd snatch them off. And the woman couldn't protect herself. All she would say is, Hasbi Allah. That's all she could say. Imam Ali didn't speak about what they did to the woman. They may have done more. He didn't even speak about any violence or rape aside from the removing of their jewelry and stealing from them. Then he says they leave the house without any harm coming to them, no resistance against them, no bruising against them, no blood being shed. They leave. They can enter any woman's house, do what they want and leave. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, if a Muslim man hears about this and dies from grief, I would not blame him. He respected the man who would die from grief for that happening to a non-Muslim woman, let alone a Muslim woman. This is Ali bin Abi Talib. If this is his teaching, how can I look at what's happening in Palestine? How can I look at what's happening in Lebanon? How can I look at this and just get on with my life? How? As a human being, how? This is a betrayal of my own humanity. And although it pains me and it hurts me, and I grieve, I grieve every day. You know, I know you mentioned about, me being tough or whatever. I grieve every day. I grieve every single day, but I don't break. I will never break. At the end of the day, all these martyrs reached that station because they lived like martyrs. So if you wish to reach a high station with God, you have to know you're going to go through difficulty. When I lost these loved ones all at the same time, I really started to think of Imam Ali alayhi salam in a different way. I know Karbala would be the obvious memory for one to have or recollect, but because I lost a leader, and losing the leader was more difficult for me than losing all my friends and family members and teach everyone. And this will be perhaps the most difficult loss for me, I think, in my life. And I thought of Imam Ali alayhi salam losing Rasulullah and how difficult that must have been. That you're not losing a friend only, or a brother only, or a teacher only. You're losing your leader. You know what that means when you lose your leaders? It means you're losing your compass. You're losing the one that you refer to, how to navigate your ship, your direction. Now you navigate alone. And he lost him, then he lost the Fatima alayhi salam right after that, and he continued. He continued, even after that heartbreak, 25 years, then he comes back and goes through all those wars in Jamal and Siffin and Nahrawan and all the opposition that he faced. He continues. That's why when he's struck on his head, the man who never lost a battle finally calls out to Allah that I am now victorious. Alhamdulillah. And so we take lessons from our A'immah. We take lessons from the Ahlul Bayt. We try to live this in our lives. This is why I would tell people right now. I mean, if we turn around and our belief is swayed when difficulty appears, then you are just the application of what we see in the narrations of the one who, when there is gharbala and chaos and confusion, you turn your back. But the one who Allah tests their heart, مَنْ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قَلْبَهُ لِلْإِيمَانِ, those are the ones who their hearts are tested. What did you think was going to happen? When you read those narrations, what did you think was going to happen? The closest of Allah's creation were tested like this. Imam al-Hussein in Karbala, you can see the value of this dunya, from the fact that someone like Shimr bin Dil-Jawshan la'anahullah sits upon the chest of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. That scene tells you the value of this world. What value does such a world have? Allahumma akhrij hubba dunya min qalbi. Imam Sajjad says, remove love of dunya from my heart. I'll tell you, I have never despised dunya as much as I do right now. And so I realize that's what it costs. It's very expensive cost to realize the reality of dunya. It's costly. But at the same time, it's a grace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed you to feel and see as a human should feel and see in this situation. That's a grace. Otherwise, God forbid, I'm just carrying on my life normally. Imam Ali would not accept that. Imam Hussein would not accept that. Rasulullah would not accept that. So I cannot accept that. Even if I'm the last one on the ship. That's how I believe one has to think. Even if you're grieving and you're bloodied and you're hurt and you're wounded. And last one on the ship. That's what we're from. That's our creed. That's Karbala. That's Sayyidah Zainab. That's Imam Sajjad. That's where we're from. We just need to apply the lessons that is part of our heritage.
Santum. Truly, yani, this time more than most, we are the students of Karbala.
Yeah, wallah.
But, some people might get upset, comparing Karbala and this. But we're gonna move past that topic. Speaking about how you deal with tough situations. It's considered manly, to be tough, and you speak about being you've spoken in the past about being masculine, what masculinity means. And And we even recently had the spiritual warrior camp that you hosted, um, and I attended as well. So this is a bit, I know it's a difficult segue to go through, but I think it is related. It's about how someone builds themselves, um, and a mindset shift, kind of. What was your goal with something like spiritual warrior, where you have a bunch of younger brothers? Because I feel like a lot of this is intertwined with everything else you just spoke about and with your overall project. And you call it, it's a project.
Mm.
You have these shabab, you have these youth. You want to work on. You want to build a brotherhood, a team, the dream team. Um, but what leads you to something like spiritual warrior? And listen, I'm not in the best shape. It was a bit grueling, I won't deny. But it was both mental and physical. So what inspired that camp?
Yes. So the Spiritual Warrior Project was an idea that became an institution over time. It was built upon mentorship. So I wanted to provide that mentorship that I received from my teachers in the same way for people that don't go to hawzah. Mentorship in which there is a mentor and a mentee, and they pass on that knowledge. From knowledge to bravery to courage to leadership. And we built the ideas in Spiritual Warrior based on something we called spiritual psychology, which was an intersection. I built upon an intersection between the archetypes of Carl Jung and the different concepts within the spiritual and mystical fields in the Islamic tradition. And so we built upon these, alhamdulillah, when it came to the relationships of men, whether it was with their spouses, their parents, their children, or their brothers, because the brotherhood aspect was a huge aspect, on the concept of futuwa. Futuwa meaning chivalry. The chivalrous warrior, young youth, built upon the great example of Imam Ali alayhi salam, was the example that we would constantly have before us in the famous line of La fata illa Ali wa la sayfa illa dhul fiqar, that there is no young, not only young man, but young warrior and young knight except Ali. And so when we put all of these different personality types in place, we had a program that we could offer a man, and it could be an older man, a man who's in his 40s even, or in his 30s, or in his 20s, depending on which stage you're at in your life. We built this project over several years, and after hundreds of young men and older men who took this project on, and we saw such fantastic results, we wanted to create the camp. The camp was when everyone got together, and we built it upon mind. So you have mental toughness and resolve, body, so physical toughness and pushing yourself to your limit. So you said that you're not physical, but I remember on the last day, you push yourself to the limit. That's a famous memory everyone has. Yeah. When you were even calling people back that were giving up. So subhanallah, that's the idea. We had to infuse the physical and the mental and the spiritual. So I held
out for the first few days, but that last day,
yeah, that was tough. Yeah. So how it was, and I believe we were trying to create an initiation where it was a point in someone's life that changed much in what they saw and what they did and what they need to do. First of all, in the devotion to God, in their relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you remember we made like Salatul Layl wajib. Like if you didn't pray Salatul Layl, you have to go home. Yeah. And when it came to all the different Quran and dua and dhikr that we would all do together, and we'd sit down, and subhanAllah, very emotional nights we'd have, spiritual, emotional nights. Physical, you remember your favorite brother Yusuf? Shout out to
Yusuf Nash.
He would not let you off. You know, he made everyone push themselves to the limit. But if you remember, it was the mental toughness, really. Like everyone was broken, but we designed it in a way that your brothers had to push you forward. constantly. And all the exercises were, carry your brother, you can't leave your brother behind.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to create the sense of loyalty and brotherhood, futuwa, fraternity amongst each other. And subhanAllah, from Australia, Canada, America, UK, several different cities in Europe as well. And we built this amazing team. And even till now, our team, I feel, is, even now we're in Toronto, and that same team is constantly together. And alhamdulillah, I don't think it's a coincidence. And this was the aim behind that, to create a brotherhood, a worldwide brotherhood, a network of similar-minded, strong warrior leaders who know how to be poets and romantic and soft with their spouses or their kids, to be kind to their parents and generous to strangers, and to be strong in defense of each other, so that when the tough times come, like right now, these were the brothers I most relied upon, because I knew that they were made of steel. And alhamdulillah, we're hoping to keep holding these camps. People think it's just like a boot camp. It's not a boot camp. It's not a random alpha male boot camp.
Yeah.
This is not an alpha male boot camp or an Andrew Tate boot camp kind of thing.
That was actually one of my concerns going into it, was this is going to be very...
I should ask you then. I should ask you what you felt.
Yeah, no, I thought, I was going in, I thought it was going to be... This is my review.
Yes.
That I give to
good.
a lot of... I had actually a handful of people ask me from all kinds of backgrounds. They didn't think I was the type of person to go, right? So they're like, you're at Hussain Makke's spiritual warrior camp. What was that? What were you doing there? And so then I was like, okay, so spiritual warrior, I'm going to break it down. I was like, it's extremely physically tough. And the hours, I have to say, whoever came up with the itinerary is mad. He's crazy, because it's not physically, it's not normal. Okay. The hours were insane, but, I found the brotherhood aspect to be phenomenal, amazing. And people that I met, and we're still in contact, and as everyone's Instagram. And it wasn't Andrew Tate, so that's what I appreciate. There were a lot of things I did learn. I do also, there were some things that I personally, the Western aspect, there's a lot of focus on maybe a Western book. I forgot the name.
The 4 archetypes, yeah.
Yeah.
King, warrior, magician, lover.
Yeah, that one, I didn't fully, it didn't really resound with me. It's not that I didn't get it, it's that I don't know, maybe it's just I liked when we talked a lot about Fatuwa, Imam Ali and that kind of stuff. And then when we go into these Western books, I kind of just don't, I don't see eye to eye with it. I don't like it. Maybe that's just me, having this kind of, it has to be Quran and Hadith kind of thing, Ahlul Bayt only. But that was just my concern. But I saw that a lot of the brothers did benefit, even if some more so than myself, to the point where I wouldn't knock it. It was something that I'm no, I would go again. So that's kind of my review of Spiritual Warrior. I'm probably not the greatest example of someone who benefited from it.
No. No, you did
but
great.
I think I still did. That's
you
my
did
point.
great, Haji. You did great.
Actually,
I've noticed a lot of things that you may not have noticed. You've said several things in the time that we spent together since, and I've noticed where that came from. Even today in the banquet, the hadith you shared on brotherhood and everything else. These things, you may not notice them, but these things become ingrained in you. They're absorbed in you. They're experiences. You'd be surprised. I felt like you've grown a lot from that experience.
I appreciate that. Inshallah, I hear that Spiritual Warrior might be coming a bit closer to home.
Hopefully,
so
Canada, yeah. Maybe
inshallah.
2025, inshallah. Summertime, I hope we can make it happen.
Inshallah, Toronto, make it happen. Ottawa, I don't know where, but Canada, make it happen.
Inshallah,
Put your pressure on the Sayed.
Inshallah.
Make it happen here. We're not trying to go to London again.
That really,
Inshallah.
really bad pizza.
Oh, yeah. You guys and your pizza. No, these guys had pizza, right? And they know we're starving. They order pizza and they don't even, I'm not really angry at you. I'm angry at my roommates, and they know who they are. They didn't even tell me. They left me awake in the room while they were munching on pizza, and they made it worse. This is not even true, but they lied to me, and they told me that it was stuffed crust. And I like stuffed crust. Was it stuffed crust?
I wasn't even there.
Oh, okay, you weren't there. They told me it was stuffed crust, right? And I got really upset at the time. I was like, because I'm so hungry.
This is why you needed spiritual warrior.
Yeah, spiritual warrior. Listen, if there was anything
is
that's
why.
going to test me,
Yeah.
it's like that. So them saying, yo, there was amazing pizza with stuffed crust, but we didn't save you any. That was probably
Lesson
the biggest
learned.
test
Yeah.
for
Well
me.
done.
I didn't.
You need some Western book advice for that one.
Western book advice?
Yeah, the ones that you don't like.
Yeah, maybe you can suggest a few. Habibi Sayed, thank you so much for this. Are there any closing remarks, anything you want to share?
Thank you for having me, Habibi. I really appreciate you, your help. I'm very proud of you for whatever that's worth, yani. And thank you for having me. And alhamdulillah ala kulli hal.
Thank you so much, Sayed. As always, it's an honor to have you. And we also, we admire you, we support you, and we just like to recognize like all the amazing work you do for the people of Lebanon, for the oppressed.
You're very kind. Thank you.
May Allah bless you and give you tawfiq and everything that you're
Habibi.
doing. Like, I'm sure you hear this a lot, but you are fighting the good fight. Yani you are fighting the fight, and inshallah we can try to follow in your footsteps.
كم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته.
No, I think you're ahlan lahu. But that's from your tawadu. It's from your humility. May Allah bless you, inshallah. May Allah bless your parents that have raised such an amazing leader of the community. And inshallah, we can have you again soon.
Habibi, it's been my honor.
Inshallah.
Thank you so
Habibi
much.
Sayyid. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.